Dr. Natalie Punt is a great example of the brilliant people in veterinary medicine. You can also feel her passion when she describes the field of research.
Research is cool. Thinking about things that nobody else is really thinking about, but it's so fascinating because you're standing on the cusp.
How she sees emergency medicine is the most fun I've heard as well.
You get a nice little selection of buffet of veterinary medicine.
Yes, Dr. Natalie enjoys experiencing multiple activities in veterinary medicine, including starting her own business. And I want you to listen as she explains how she thinks through taking each step of her career journey. She's very good at checking in with her personal values and how she wants to show up in her life journey.
The different challenges of emergency medicine fit the aspects of my personality I wanted to express.
And we will start very early for Dr. Natalie as she describes her initial enchantment with our profession. When did you know you wanted to get into veterinary medicine?
I think I wanted to become a veterinarian when I was younger because I grew up basically on a small farm, small ranch, and we had a lot of animals, and kind of interacting with them just kind of developed a love and appreciation for animals. And also was pretty fortunate to have quite a few strong veterinarians in my community as being neighbors. So I had a predominant, I had one woman. She was a NFR National Finals Rodeo barrel racer, and she raised top level barrel racing horses and also had her own practice. So watched her go through the trials and tribulations of being a veterinarian. And also had this kind of older school veterinarian, but he was a mixed animal practitioner, and he'd travel around, and watching them kind of do their daily activities and be veterinarians and how strong their personalities were and how accomplished they were was really inspiring. And also being able to kind of just help animals. And I remember when I was younger, I had a really strong key pivotal moment when I was riding my horses and they were getting lame, or as horses do, they become lame. And so I was trying to understand, how can I make them feel better? All the treatments our local vet was offering to us was not enough. I'm like, well, how can I make my horse better? I want my horse not to be sore all the time. And so thinking about how can I help animals and do things better than what's currently being done was pretty strong motivation for me to get into science and also vet medicine.
Oh, yeah. And I bet that I'm getting ahead of myself, but may even have a big part of going into research as well as trying to find new solutions also in health. So what was next? So you got the fire in you. What was kind of the journey into vet school like?
I did a lot of so when I was younger, I did a lot of ride-alongs and also shadowing and interning with the veterinarians in my community. And I would and with the one mixed animal practitioner, I remember he would come pick me up and I would jump in his truck and we'd just drive around the countryside. And that was so cool. It was so cool just driving around the countryside with this mixed animal veterinarian, going to different farms or ranches, and it just every single case was just so unique. You go to somebody's home and you would help treat their animals. So from there, I went to UC Davis because I'm in Northern California. I was like, there was only one school I wanted to go to. It was Davis. And so I'm like, okay, Davis it is. And being there immersed in the overall kind of environment of being on that campus was also a strong motivator. But at the same time, I really enjoyed doing research and kind of fell in love with the passion for doing research. I took my first OChem class and just was fascinated by chemistry. It's like, oh my gosh, thinking about how those different molecules and atoms interacted to create compounds and then how they interacted in solution. It was very interesting. So I thought more about going into research side of things because still at the same time I wanted to know, how can I make animals better? Sure, I can treat them medically as a veterinarian, but is there anything I can do as a research wise or a scientist to create better drugs or find better ways of treating them? So I kind of started following more of a research path. And that led me into some research labs at Davis. And I was really fortunate to be involved with some very high quality, high level scientists who were going through and doing top, like very strong research. My first research project was going through investigating how DNA recombines after it breaks. So homologous end joining recombination.
Oh,
And
wow.
this lab actually led to the sequencing of BRCA1, which was kind of a problematic gene to sequence because it was so long, and the technology at the time wasn't going to be able to allow us to be able to sequence it. So we had chopped up in a bunch of different fragments and sequenced it that way. But also going through elucidating how DNA actually goes through the process of identifying the ends of DNA that's been broken and then figuring out how to go through and reseal it together. So that was kind of so having that as a very strong like pivotal part of my education is like, okay, research is cool. This is awesome. Going through thinking about things that nobody else is really thinking about, but it's so fascinating because you're standing on the cusp of making research and understanding how this works. It's an experience and like a sensation like no other. It's just incredible. So I took that and wanted to still do research and went into my master's program. And to take a step back, my dad passed away from cancer when I was younger. So I still had that inner drive to know how things work and try to figure out how can I make a meaningful contribution to society in terms of research or going through and being able to help people or help animals. And so I wanted to go through and do that in terms of cancer. So I decided to go through and direct myself towards cancer research. And I went to one of the first cancer institutions in the nation called Roswell Park Cancer Institution and was involved in a couple of research projects there. I still had the research bug in me, but I still couldn't make up my mind. Like, do I want to go through and commit to a career as a PhD academic scientist, or do I want to become a veterinarian? And so I took that idea and went to Boston, where I worked at Harvard Medical School, still doing research, but this time in pediatric leukemia, identifying, characterizing, characterizing specific type of leukemia called mixed lineage leukemia, and trying to understand how that leukemia expresses a certain repertoire of genes that allows it to be able to go through and develop.
Did you work with the patients at all, or was this mainly lab work?
Mainly lab, is
That
mainly lab
work.
work. And so going through and we would take patient samples and characterize it, and be able to do epigenomic sequencing, and then also go through and do DNA sequencing and some cell characteristics. Kind of got on the cusp of that. Ran out that we did that project. It kind of stood on the cusp of that. I think, well, there will be a PhD scientist or a veterinarian, and so I applied to both, got into both programs. And I was like, well, what do I want to do with my life? Do I want to be able to like write grants and be a scientist and be in the lab, which is cool, writing papers, okay, cool. Or do I want to go through and talk to people about their animals? And then also I knew veterinary medicine is such a dynamic field and there's so many opportunities involved in it. I felt like becoming a scientist was just a little too much of a one-way direction. Whereas being a veterinarian, you were going in a direction, but there's so many opportunities out there. So I decided to become a veterinarian to kind of give myself more opportunity to explore and wonder, explore the world. So that's what led me into vet school.
Well, that's exactly why we have this podcast, is to show how many different things that veterinarians can do. So I definitely understand kind of the sense of adventure that can live and exploring the veterinary path. So when you decided to go into a veterinary school, did you have an idea of what you might do later, or were you kind of like blank slate? I'm just going to go to vet school and see what I want to do?
No, I was full on focused on being a veterinary oncologist and doing research. Like that was it. That was it. I just wanted to go through. I wanted to be a veterinary oncologist and then do research. And I started doing research and actually was probably by my second month of vet school, I already had my own independent research project up and off the ground and running, going through and doing research, and had like funding some funding from the vet school itself, also going through and helping me go through and like develop this research project. So I had this thing all up off the ground running by my first year of vet school. And then also was going through and like I don't think I was going through and actually being involved. I think I was too early. I think I was too early to be like thinking about being a veterinary oncologist, but just developing myself to be a strong candidate. And then I started and then research project overall went really well. I started I was able to go through and be able to eventually write the first thesis for my vet school, and then also get a paper published out of that. And also I was given a couple of opportunities to be an NIH scholar twice, and then also 1 year as an NIH and a Howard Hughes Medical fellow, which is pretty cool. My friends were like, "What's that?" I'm like, "You don't know what Howard Hughes is." Yeah, that's pretty cool.
It is cool, even if your best friends didn't know it.
And then I started thinking about becoming, and then after vet school, I jumped into my small animal internship with the intention of going into an oncology residency. After the internship, well, I did research also during my internship, and then then I got into a oncology fellowship just because I still was like, I was trying to having some doubts. I'm like, okay, I'm trying to feel like what a residency is going to feel like. And there's still like, that's not really the reason why I got into vet medicine. There's so many opportunities. And I'm definitely a very curious, passionate, adventurous soul. So like going through and doing a residency program and then being committed to just one thing within veterinary medicine, is that consistent with my personality? I'm like, oh, that's a good question to ask yourself, Natalie.
Yeah.
So I did my fellowship and my doubts they definitely came forward too. I'm like, well, you know what? I'm not, one reason why I like being a veterinarian is I'm not stuck in a lab all the time. And being in oncology, well, guess what? You're going to be going to the same department, doing the same thing. Means yes, your patients are gonna be different. And yes, you can find the pleasures and understand the differences between your patients. But at the end of the day, what you're doing is it has a routine to it. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm that type of person. So I decided not to go through and do an oncology residency and decided to go through and be more focused on something that I did enjoy, which is emergency medicine. And I didn't really quite see myself as being an emergency doctor, but I liked the fact that as an emergency veterinarian working in a specialty hospital, you're kind of standing in the middle of everything that's coming through the door. And that's good. It's also bad because you're literally like everything coming right through you,
Yeah.
but you're interacting with all these different people who are so good at what they do. You get to be able to talk to them. You get a nice little like selection of buffet of veterinary medicine. And then also,
Veterinary buffet. There you go.
yeah, emergency medicine is a buffet. I like that. I like being able to like be able to do I like being able to triage and see different things and being able to go through and I mean it has its pros and cons, but I liked being able to just be able to see different things and kind of just have my mind work in different ways and rather than going through and doing something that's over and over and over again. So I found myself into emergency medicine and it was not quite the clear path I would ever have thought I got into, but I ended up it fit my personality very, very well. And so I was fortunate in that the different challenges of emergency medicine fit the aspects of my personality I wanted to express. And so I like that part of it.
Yeah. And I really like how you checked in multiple times throughout that to really see, is this really what I want to keep doing? And you didn't let years of research make you stick in that path. You're like, no, I think I could do something different as well. That's really cool that I got to do that. Check. But
Yeah.
I really want to explore what's next. And if emergency medicine isn't crazy enough, you decided, well, let's also mix up all the hospitals, right, and do a traveling work as well. So when did you start getting set up to be a traveling emergency veterinarian?
I think that was an aspect of the state of veterinary medicine when I got out of my fellowship. I was going through
Mm.
looking at what hospitals and where do I want to live. And so I went through and was kind of systematic about it. And I chose like I set up this US News top 50 places for young professionals to live. I started going through and reviewing and say, okay, where are the different places that I could possibly live as a young professional, set myself up. St. Louis was one of them actually. There was like 7 of them, and I went down and made a list of it. Say, okay, what are the pros and cons of living here? Will it fit my personality and what I would like to have out of a place? And San Diego came to the top of the list. I'm like, ooh, don't choose that. It's expensive.
Yeah.
Don't choose that. But I mean, it definitely had everything I wanted in spades. So I chose that. And I started looking at different specialty hospitals I could work at. And I'm like, I knew of each one and knew their personalities and knew kind of what the state of the hospital was. I'm like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be committed to just this one hospital. I'm not going to be happy. It's like, well, what can I do? And it's getting to the point where I really had to basically get a job. I had research, this recruiter reached out to me. I was explaining to like, well, I'm getting ready to go through and like commit to this one hospital in San Diego, but it doesn't feel right. I don't want to be there for like more than 6 months, honestly. And they're like, well, you're probably gonna sign a contract for 2 years. I'm like, yeah, I know. I don't want to do that. Like, well, have you thought about like traveling to the hospital and working out there for a while? I'm like, okay, what kind of hospitals do you have? Like, well, we have hospitals in these states, and one of them was Kentucky. I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't mind going to Kentucky for a while, exploring Kentucky. I mean, there's a lot of sports country out
Right,
there.
exactly.
That'd be fun. And then also, I mean, at the same time that I was going out there, is going to the Kentucky Derby, and then being able to see all the different horse farms, get to understand the overall culture and the history of Kentucky. And it's also just a beautiful state. So gorgeous to be out there too. A lot of open prairie land, and like if you're into like going for long hikes, Kentucky has it in spades. So I spent a couple months, I think about 3 months in Kentucky, which was a blast. I had so much fun to be able to explore it, understand what Kentucky was all about. And then after 3 months, I'm like, okay, I think I've done my time. I think I'm ready to move on to the next hospital. So they said there's a larger hospital up in Pittsburgh that was a very high volume hospital. Do you want to try that? I'm like, sure. Pittsburgh sounds like fun. So from there, I realized I had the personality. And then also when I was younger, my family loved to travel. And so I already had a knowledge and understanding of how to travel and how to travel well for periods of time. Like, well, why just keep on doing this? It's fun. It gives me diversity. It gives me a little spice in my life. I get to travel and explore and understand different parts of the country at a strong level. So just go through and so I just keep on traveling. And so started doing that and developed good relationships with different hospitals across the nation, and then started getting more and more licenses. And I'm like, well, this is working.
That's fantastic. And I also want to acknowledge with your multiple interests, when I asked last time, when did Impet come in? It was like way back into your schooling, correct? So tell us about Impet.
Okay. So back when I was doing my internship, the my mentor who I was working under wanted to go through and create some way to identify or track the incidence of adverse events associated with chemotherapy. And so want to be able to go through and track the number of times a patient would have vomiting or diarrhea or a loss of appetite or even nausea. If they go through, if those are able to go through and identify like hypersalivation or some lip smacking. So we were talking about it, and he wanted to go through and make a smartphone app for it. I'm like, oh, that's cool. And like, I have like background research, and so I'm like, okay, let me go through and we create this whole project and research proposal, and I can go through and run with this. And so I went over, and I was at Iowa State at the time doing my internship, and the Iowa State has a really strong computer science program. And so I did what every researcher did. I went through and like jogged over to the other program, other department, like, hey, I've got a research project that we're thinking about doing. Can you guys help out? So we got to the state where we're going to potentially have a master's student be able to go through and code and develop this whole app and make that into a master's project. And so kind of this whole thing like up and going. I had the project kind of like, or at least a project outline. I went back to my mentor and I was like, hey, I got some ideas. He's like, wait, hold on. I'm actually going to be starting to develop the radiation oncology program here. So I think I got my plate pretty full. I'm like, oh, okay. So we kind of took a few steps down, ended up using a survey platform, a web-based survey platform, rather than going to develop the smartphone app. But I thought the idea of having a smartphone app was really cool. Didn't really think going through and making it just for chemotherapy, just for oncology patients was what I wanted to do. So I kind of just like let that idea ferment for a while. It wasn't until I got into emergency medicine and started patients coming in and nobody had their medical records. I'm like, there's surely this is not like I'm not the first person to think of this. I wasn't. There's a few other people that already thought about it, but at the same time, nobody really went through and made it the way a veterinarian would think about it. Like, how would you go through and create some type of app to be able to store pet medical records in a way that a veterinarian would go through and think about accessing it? And there's also really no way to be able to go through and transfer these medical records using a smartphone app. So I created Impet as a way for pet owners to be able to store, manage, and transfer their pet medical records. And then I also drew a little bit from my oncology background and also create a quality of life journal that pet owners can be able to go through and record the number of times a patient or their pet would have vomiting or diarrhea or loss of appetite, and also some different it's like subjective quality of life parameters. Like, are they enjoying their life? Can they go through and play? If they like playing with the ball, can they play with the ball? If they like going on walks, can they still go on walks? If they like laying in a sunny spot in the home, can they still get to that spot and lay there and enjoy it? Did another reiteration of that, and then also added the ability to get you receive notifications for when medications are due, and then also be able to receive notifications when vaccines are due. And I also linked it to online pharmacy vet source, so you can order food, diets, and also medications, depending on whether or not you have a prescription for it, directly through vet source. So that's when Impact came about. I launched it in 2019. It was doing well. I have about 10,000 users right now. COVID definitely stalled that going forward, but getting it back up and running.
Oh, wow. So do you talk mainly to veterinarians about the app, or what is your
It's
outreach like?
been an interesting experience, honestly, because I go through and I talk to veterinarians and they're like, oh, it's really cool. But there's like a breakdown between people say, oh, it's really cool, and then actually using it. And
Mm,
I'm trying to understand that more. And I'm thinking it's more, I don't reflect upon myself when somebody tries to give me an app to use. I'm like, no, immediate no. I don't want this. Like
too
people,
many apps.
I think that's what it's coming down to. Like people have to reach a certain threshold to need to download it. And I find that actually people who have a lot of intensive management of their patients, of their pets, like oncology patients actually love the app and they'll download it. Like, oh, I have a way to be able to store all my pets' medical records and all their blood work, and also be able to order medications. This is perfect for me. Or people who've had experiences before going to emergency hospitals and not
Mhm.
having their medical records with them. So they have like a background history or information to draw from to understand the value of that app, then they're more likely to download it. But if you just go through and give it to somebody, like, hey, here's an app that can help you in the future, like, okay, that's cool.
Yeah, so more like in immediate need,
Yeah,
so they can appreciate the value that it can bring. Definitely for, I can see with oncology, they've got multiple treatments that kind
yeah,
of depending on the protocol they're doing,
yeah,
just reminders. I also can see that maybe in hospice situations where
absolutely.
those types of owners would appreciate quality of life scales and connections with their veterinarians, having those medical records, which usually by that time the pet has full long medical records that would be
Yeah,
nice to keep up with. So I can definitely see where that would be a really good target audience as well.
yeah.
What are you most excited about these days with you needing lots of different things to do? What keeps you most excited?
Oh gosh. Well, I have a couple of projects that I'm working on right now. I found that I really miss research. And so I was trying to find ways to get back involved with research. And so I have. I'm very fortunate to be involved with this institution and also working on the projects that I'm working on. So that's been fun. And then just going through and finding some more creative outlets, just going through and doing more work with photography. And then also picking up a new sport, so learning how to golf too.
Oh, wow. That is really neat. And I'm sure somebody is thinking about this, that they might like the idea of being like a relief veterinarian. How do you incorporate kind of a crazy travel schedule as a relief vet and being able to incorporate some other interests like research and golf and all those other things?
Well, the cool thing about golf is the golf courses all across the nation, and that's
That's
one reason why I want to get golf. Just like I can pretty much golf anywhere and be very fortunate that I already have a travel routine, and I can just basically and golf is going to be a beautiful complement to it. So I'm pretty fortunate to have
yeah.
that.
What about
And
research? Because I would think that you would want to be at a certain location.
it's all gosh, it's just basically going through and doing data processing.
Oh, data. So as long
Yeah,
as you have internet and a computer, you're probably fine.
yeah, and a lot of modeling.
Yeah. Well, that's really interesting. I mean, I bet people wouldn't think that you would have that ability, but thank goodness for technology, you really can do a lot of different things if that's your interest. So that's really
Like that.
cool.
I mean, like people think of research going through and going to the lab and being able to do cell-based experiments. Not necessarily so you can do a lot of modeling, a lot of like thought-based experiments as well.
Yeah. Also, something that you have a really unique perspective of being relief and traveling all over. You've seen a lot of different hospitals and how they run. So, what are some of your learnings from traveling to lots of different hospitals? What are some maybe common problems that you see? And then what are some things that people are doing really well that you see work well?
The thing that makes a hospital run really well is when you have a reduction in the amount of conflict between people. So you can eliminate strong, abrasive personalities, that it does wonders. Some of the hospitals that I go to that I just can't wait to go back is they have genuinely sweet, kind, caring people at their center. So like hospital managers who are incredibly kind, or lead nurses who are just like they're just, you look at them and you're like, oh my God, you're a beautiful soul. And so like you
Oh,
can't wait to work with them again. And it also reflects, it also like that type of personality permeates throughout the entire hospital. And if you go to a
yeah.
hospital, people are sick, it's stressful. Why do you want to have like these abrasive personalities there as well, adding to the stress? If you have a kind soul in the hospital who's really wants to be able to do what's best for everybody involved, that idea or that personality kind of permeates throughout the entire hospital and totally changes its flavor.
Yeah, an infectious kindness. You
Yeah,
want those people for sure. Makes a much
absolutely.
better
Yeah.
environment. What are again with you've seen a lot of different things in different hospitals. You've gotten to try lots of different things in veterinary medicine. What are some things you would like to tell the veterinary professions?
I think we're very fortunate to be able to do what we do. If you think about that human animal bond, there's nothing like the relationship between a human and an animal. That bond is so unique and so special. And we are exceptionally fortunate to be at the forefront of it, and be able to witness that bond, how it happens on a day-to-day basis. And then also be able to partake that in our daily lives, whether it's with our own pets or going through and seeing animals out in the wild to interact with them. Like our observation skills of animals are much different, and we are exceptionally fortunate for that. And then also at the same time, our profession is evolving very fast too. And so we should be constantly be aware of different opportunities that are coming up, and then also constantly trying to make our profession better too. There's so much room for improvement and being able to help our profession just grow. Like we're definitely going through a state of growth and change, and it's evident throughout the entire profession itself. And just trying to say, how can we do what's best for our patients, do what's best for animals and pets, and also for clients too, and make sure we are growing in the right directions.
I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
And something you said about our pets, with being a relief veterinarian, do you get to have pets? Do you have pets?
I foster.
Okay.
Yeah. And so every so often I'll find a pug that fills my heart and bring it home.
Are you a pug person? Oh,
Of course I'm a pug person.
how can you not be? They're the cutest things. So, what does success look like for you now?
I think success is going through making sure all parts of my life are balanced and satisfying. So making
Mm.
sure that my intellectual curiosity is being satisfied by working on fulfilling and interesting research projects and being surrounded by intellectuals in that aspect. Making sure my creative side is being fulfilled by going through and finding creative projects like photography and working with other creatives in that aspect. Making sure my wanderlust is constantly being fed by traveling. Keeping
Yes.
up with my travel perks. And then also making sure that I'm preparing myself for the future as I progress through life, and making sure I'm set up for different life stages too.
Thank you so much for sharing your career
So,
journey so far. You've got a long way to go. So I'm curious to check in with you in the future to see what you're up to next and what other places you've gone to. What would be a place that you have really enjoyed, but you probably wouldn't have thought you enjoyed? Like what's one of those like surprise wonders that you've found?
surprise location.
Yeah,
Um, let's see here. Well, you know how when you travel someplace, you're like, oh, this is going to be horrible. I'm going to hate it. It actually turned out to be pretty good because it overcomes your expectations.
exactly.
I can be easily entertained just about anywhere I go. So, um,
That's a good way to be.
yeah. So I think Pittsburgh was actually a delightful surprise. I didn't expect Pittsburgh to be so dynamic and have so many different facets to its personality. I really had a fun time exploring Pittsburgh. I think it's a city that people they think of as being this old industrial aged out city, but it's not. It's super dynamic. The people there are great, very passionate, very friendly, very proud of their city. And there's so much history, American history, and
Mhm.
incorporated in Pittsburgh itself. You can learn a lot from that city.
Pittsburgh? Mm-hmm.
All right. So your rapid fire questions. I'm really interested to hear this one from you. What is something on your bucket list?
So I don't believe in bucket lists. Normally when I get an idea, I get the idea, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do this.
Nice. Okay. So
So
what's the next thing you want to do?
I'm going to go ski for a while. So I got the Icon Pass, and they have different international ski destinations. And so I was going to go through and just travel and ski across Europe for a little bit.
Oh, that is really neat. So
Yeah.
have you skied before
Oh
or?
yeah, I grew up. I've been skiing since I was like 12.
Oh, okay. I've never skied before. So to me, that's very intimidating.
It's the best. I mean, it's so good. Like when you're out there on the mountain, and just oh, it's so good. It's so good.
Do you travel by yourself or do you take people with you?
I have friends who like to travel, and also my family likes to travel too.
Oh, nice. So you've got plenty of people to go
Yeah.
jump on a plane and go with you.
But also at the same time, if I can be by myself for a couple of days, I have no problem doing that either.
Oh my goodness. Sometimes just give me
Right?
a day. One day. Oh, that sounds great. All right. So what is a simple moment that brings you joy?
Watching the sunrise come up gives me a lot of joy. Seeing a text message from a friend come across always gives me joy too.
Oh, that's a good one. I like that one.
Yeah.
Somebody thought of you. Yeah. So, what is one law? If you could create a law, what is a law that you would make everyone follow?
Be a good person. Just be a good person. Don't be mean. Don't be superficial. Don't be petty. Don't scam people. Just be a good person, you know?
Yeah. Back to that. I like that infectious kindness that you talked about with people in those hospitals that you always want to go back to. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish more people were like that.
And it shows too. I mean, I was going through and talking to a friend who's also becoming a travel vet, and she's like, "Well, what hospitals?" And she was talking about where she's licensed at. I'm like, "Oh, this hospital is great. This hospital is great." And she's like, "Why?" I'm like, "Because the people there are good to work with."
Yeah. Oh, you didn't say how many states are you licensed in?
15.
15. That is nuts. I thought I was all proud of myself for being licensed in 3 states. And then you, yeah, I 15. I was like, oh my goodness, probably the work to keep up with all those. But
No,
man, it's
actually, the licensing boards do a really good job reminding you when you should pay them. So
yes,
take the work out
they
for
like
me.
money. And finally, what is something you are most grateful for?
Being able to do what I do, I think it's really fortunate. I'm really fortunate to have these experiences and have these opportunities in front of me, and just sometimes you just like you get an opportunity to paint yourself like I can't believe that happened. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Back to that dream on and figuring out how to make animals better. You're living that dream.
Yeah, I am.
We have a really cool profession, and I'm glad to have you with me in it. So thank you so much for your time and for, like I said, for sharing your career. This has been the Vet Life Reimagined podcast. Whether you are listening or watching on YouTube, I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Please make sure you are subscribed to catch all these amazing people in our profession. Also, send this episode to someone you think who would appreciate it. Have a recommendation for someone who would be a good guest? Please reach out on LinkedIn, Instagram, or Facebook. There aren't that many Dr. Sprinkles. Until next time, Vet Lifers.